Hi everybody, and welcome to the Breatharian Institute of America. My name is Brandon Day, and I'll be hosting this little video basically to begin to open up a subject that's very close to my heart and something that I care about very much. It's about children. All of us were once children, if we're not children right now. And so everybody in a way can relate to this. I want to encourage everybody to, if you feel triggered, to look into that and see what it is that feels bad. If you have a bad feeling, see what's triggering you, if this brings up any triggers. What this video is really, as always, is my attempt to make sense of things in the world at large, because certain things make sense to me, but they don't seem to be on the table of discussion for the human family, really whatsoever. So I wanted to bring this little thing forward that I've noticed with children. So I have a child that's very close to me, and I began to notice a serious problem. She's a toddler, and she's just over a year old. And what began to really happen is she has come into a position of there always being a power struggle in the family. So she struggles for control of a thing, be it the breast, or be it whether she wants to sit in her car seat, or whether she wants to, do whatever. Or at least she was in that struggle. And so it really just occurred to me of like, when does this thing stop? So I started to do research. The parents of this child started to do research, because I was really interested in like, where does this stop? Because it just seems to be that once a power struggle begins, that the struggle just continues and grows further and further. So basically, we began to work on this problem. And so just to backtrack a little bit from that, Wiley being my teacher, Wiley always knew that he was God. He never didn't know who he was. His only problem is he thought everybody knew that they were God. And so one of the things when Wiley and I came together that he really expressed to me is that, the thing that saved his life the most when he was a child is that his parents were so strict on him. His father was a traveler and traveled all around. I don't remember what he told me his dad did, but he traveled all around. And when his dad would come home, he would line up everybody in a line, and basically everybody would get a spanking. And he always expressed to me how much that helped him further in life. Because for one, he said they all deserved it. And it made everything so calm and peaceful in the house after his dad got home, once he set things straight. Now, I'm not a fan of spankings myself, but I will say that I was spanked. And I can also say that it really helped me. There were a couple of times my parents went overboard with it, but that was really mostly everything. I deserved every spanking that I got. I deserved every spanking that I got, period. But some of them were maybe over the top, when my parents acted out of anger instead of dominance, if you will. So I always found that really interesting, that Wiley, as someone who knew that they were God, still believed in spankings. And the way that he described it is that sorry about this, guys. The way that he described it is that he said without this discipline that he would have not had any way of controlling himself as an adult, but he learned self-control as a child by his parents having control of him. So he was a real fan of that kind of thing. And I've really been on the fence about it, but I did notice that it worked for me. And Wiley did, make it very known that it worked for him. So I was kind of like, okay, well, we'll just, see where this goes. And, I didn't have any children in my life at the time. So I just kind of took in what he said and, heard it and stuff. But what we found with this toddler is that timeouts just work excellent, right? And so there's really no spankings going on with this child. There's timeouts, but the timeouts show her that she's not in control of anything. She's just not in control. And something really neat and very educating to me has happened since she's begun to be put into timeout. So just to backtrack a little bit, for me, I never questioned whether I had any control or not, okay? My parents had complete control over everything when I was a child. They controlled what I ate, they controlled when I slept, they controlled just everything. So there was never a power struggle for me. With my brother, or all of my brothers, they all had power struggles with my parents. And ultimately, they've all suffered a lot because of that, from addiction. One of my brothers died. He left the body. But he was completely out of control as a human being. And one of the things that I've just noticed is when children are given freedom, they never learned what I learned. And what I learned as a child, I could see very clearly, and I wrote this in one of my stories. I think it's called In the Beginning, and it's on Breatharian.com on the website. And in that story I talk about this, and I didn't really know what the relevance would be later on, that I'd be even including that in a video. But in the story In the Beginning, I basically lay out my childhood and what my childhood experience was. And adults had what I considered to be a superpower. And that superpower was the power of choice. That was something I never had. I never had the power of choice. So I accepted it. I accepted that as an adult power that one day I would gain. And so what gift that gave me is that at that point, when I really could see that that was just clearly the truth, that was never going to change, never then going to change, I could see that I felt this power inside of me, but then I had to find it, because I was never in a struggle of who's controlling the outer world. I got to really look into, well, where is the power within me? And what I found is what I call my divine imagination. I found that the power that I had was the power of my imagination. So from that position of power that I'd really gained full control of by the time I was 4 years old, I was able to create my adulthood from within my imagination. And things have just gone perfectly as I planned then. And that's something that I've noticed that people don't have, is real control over their minds. And this is a gift that I was given by my parents, because I didn't have control of the world. I had to find where I had some control. Where is my power? I don't have any power in the world to make decisions, so where is my power? So people consider, this freedom thing with children to be a thing to include children in choices. I was never really included in any choices. I was basically under complete control. But within there, I found where my real choices are as a little child God. And I found a certain thing that the other people around me mostly still don't have control of. And it's something that I had from the time of being a child, because I was raised in such an old school kind of way. So, what has happened within this young child's life is that since her parents began to take complete control, and I basically instructed them. These are students of the institutes. They were students of Wiley's and they're students of mine. I basically instructed them to go about the timeout in the same way that my parents went about showing me that they have complete control. Because the fact is, children have no control unless they're given control. Now, why would you give a child control, really? If you're looking for the child to be themselves, how does control even enter into that? I was able to largely be myself, and I didn't even have parents that were at all conscious, you know. I won't even get into the backstory of my parents, but they were anything but conscious people. But still, I was allowed to maintain and retain a certain aspect of myself that all of my other brothers were not able to maintain. And they were given control. And then in somewhere in that mechanism, they lost their power. I was given no control, but within that mechanism, I was allowed to retain my power. So what we're finding within this child is that the parents are very conscious, and they very much don't want to suppress or oppress this child's power. But they can see how deadly it is to give her any control. So power and control are two completely different mechanisms. So what they're finding is that her self, her true self, is able to really blossom and grow within this dynamic of having no control. She doesn't have a say-so about certain things at all. She doesn't have a say-so about when she's going to pitch a fit, what she wants to eat even. You know, one of the ways that my parents showed me complete control was by making me sit at the table from breakfast to lunch to dinner a number of times. And that, like, I cried when I was at the table, but it was never a brat cry. I just was upset and sad because I knew that the food was poison, and I couldn't bring myself to eat it at the pace that they wanted me to eat it. So it was upsetting to me, and they understood that I cried, but I never cried that bratty cry of I'm trying to, ruin everybody's life around me so that I can, have what I want. Because I knew my parents would tell me, I'll give you something to cry about, and they meant it. There was never a question for me of if they meant it or not. So, this young child has gone through, wanting the fits of wanting certain foods and these kind of things, but her parents are in a position of being able to choose real foods for her, foods that act like foods within her body, foods that don't act like poisons within her body. My parents had nothing like this ability, so already she's way up on where I was, as far as the ability to be nurtured. And her parents are much more careful than mine ever were. And what we've found in this mechanism is that her true power to develop and mature in an extremely fast way has come forward. Her ability to really be herself, now that she has no control over the world, her ability to come forth and bring her power and her original self forward and just really enjoy life has come forward. And this is kind of what the opposite it's kind of the opposite of what people are teaching, about children having a voice, all these things, freedom. And what I've noticed is that it just ruins people's lives across the board. This child is just one example, but she's one of those examples for me that was fresh in the beginning. And we were able to help her to understand how to be before things got too far out of hand. And it's just the results have been astounding and beautiful. And I know that this is a way that so many people are raised to believe that, that children should have a voice and all of this. But I never had a real voice like that, so I had to learn to control my inner voice. And I don't know if that's where this child is gonna, I think she'll always have a voice, but she'll know that her opinion doesn't really matter. It's being taken into account, but people have to understand everybody has at least a 10,000 opinions, and there's billions of us. So, that brings us into the trillion or at least 100 billion mark on how many opinions there are. And most of them don't matter, because that's the thing about a democracy, that I didn't live in a democracy. I lived in a dictatorship. It was how my parents say it was. And, a democracy is so dangerous because everybody has a voice, even when they're not educated on a thing. So why should a child have an opinion that matters? Now, being heard is something different than your opinion mattering. It's something that I'm noticing across the board. So I'll give you another example. There's a 16-year-old in my life, and he was just pitching a fit with his mother because his mother raised him in a way where she nurtured his independence, right? But he's not independent. It's a lie. It's like the children thing with control. They're given control, but they're given control by the person who's in control, because the person who's in control doesn't want to be in control all the time. Otherwise, they would never give up their control to the child. You see? And so it's this thing with independence and these kids wanting a voice, and it's like, I always understood I don't slam my door in my house because it's not my house and it's not my door, So I would never even shut my door if it was against, what my parents wanted, because it wasn't my door. I was living in their house, under their roof, eating their food, going to what school they chose for me to go to, and there was never a question about these things. And in that, I was able to develop an inner freedom that I noticed that people don't have. So a lot of the young kids who come into the Breatharian Institute, they resent me because I was able to get these gifts from Wiley. But nobody sits down and wonders, well, what's so special about this Brandon guy? Well, I can tell you, there's nothing special about me. There's a wonderful way that I was raised as a child to be able to sit down for long amounts of time and listen to old people, to not get bothered by old people's, opinions or thoughts kind of overriding mine in a way, because I understood that older people have more wisdom than young people, because I was just taught that from the beginning. So there's really nothing special about me other than I was able to sit still and listen to Wiley long enough to get the download of information that he needed to bring into a lineage, into this world. So this young 16-year-old just recently popped up and had strong destructive opinions toward his mother. And, I told his mother, look, don't call me when you're alone. Don't call me around this kid if he's going to have a mouth on him, because I'm going to say exactly what the truth is for me as his senior and as an elder to him, which is, he's a kid who gives a damn about his opinion. It doesn't matter. Send him on to wherever the hell else he wants to go, because if he's going to sit here and fight you, he's working against you. Now you've got an enemy in your home, and you're going to get back into the confusion that you've been in. So I had to say that in front of him, because she called me with him right there saying, he's being insultive toward me. He's following the people who've mind controlled him. And I'm like, well, send him back to the mind controllers if that's where he wants to be. Otherwise tell him to sit there and shut up and hear the truth and try and make sense of it. Just try and make sense of what it is that you're saying, but definitely don't disrespect you, or he can go his little butt right back to where he came from. And this is, one of the things I've noticed is, like, children everywhere in grocery stores, they're ruining everybody's life. The parents act like it doesn't even matter, like they don't care, like that, oh yeah, that's just the child. It's like, no, you suck as a parent, and everybody around you knows it, because you're letting your child, run the whole world. When I'm running restaurants and things, I'm going to have an open book policy about how we deal with children. You cannot come in and let your children ruin everybody else's experience. There is no way. We will kick you out. Even if I have to have a bad child section outside in another building altogether, I'll build it just to let everybody eat in peace, because it's just a terrible thing, and everybody without children knows this. But people with children just think it's the way that it is. Yet the children are basically ruining everybody's world and ruining the world because they don't care about anything outside of themselves. You know? And so this is what I was taught as a child, is I had to have respect for the world outside of me. And that's what Wiley said that he was taught as a child. It is, you know, how to have respect for the world and to know that there are boundaries. And if you cross those boundaries, there's pain for crossing the boundaries. So Wiley was always grateful for his parents. He was always grateful to the military for helping to discipline him as a god, so that he had God-level discipline. Now, this other kid has come into my world. I call him a kid. He's a god. He's absolutely like Wiley. He has no question that he's the creator of the universe, right? But he always comes at me with his opinions and stuff. And now I just don't even respond to him anymore. I'm not going to tell anybody here his name. It doesn't matter. He's definitely going to see the video and he'll be upset, but I don't care. He has creator level power and he is completely out of control. He thinks that the beginning and end of everything is him and his mother. He doesn't give a damn about me or you. He doesn't care about the world. He doesn't care about helping anything. And so he is a terribly destructive God. And so, excuse me, I'm going to mute this phone. Yeah, so basically I'm being shown the same thing over and over again, you know, through this kid who has all kinds of power. He's like 19 years old. All kinds of power. He has no question that he's the creator, just like Wiley had no question. But Wiley was disciplined. This kid is out of control. And here's the problem. Children know that they have the power, but they have zero control. So there's a terribly destructive thing that happens when you have all kinds of power and no control. And these new kids are coming into this world with loads of power. And if we as adults don't help them to learn control, then they will just continue to destroy everything, just like they're doing now. Look at them on social media, wrapping their laptops in you know, rubber bands and throwing them off rooftops, just destroying everything, you know, with no regard of the suffering of the world, because they just were never taught to care about the world outside of them. They were taught that they are the center of the universe. So, and they are, you know, and I am. But I was taught as a child to have respect for the things outside of me, and if I didn't respect them, there was a consequence to that. So what this toddler has been learning in her timeout experience, you know, is that that I have zero control. I'll have to sit in timeout. She, as far as she's concerned, for the rest of her life, if she doesn't get control of herself. And then as soon as she has control, the timer starts, and then she comes off of the timeout mat once she's gained control of herself for a certain amount of time. And it's perfect. You know, it's perfect. And within there, she's begun to blossom in ways that are just incredible. I don't go into the personal lives of my students, so I won't go into any details, but in the shorter, longer run, you guys will hear the stories, I'm sure, from those students themselves. These are three different examples: the toddler, the 16-year-old, and the 19-year-old, of power that's completely out of control. Now, when the 16-year-old, when the mother called me and I was able to say what I said on the phone, it snapped him out of his madness. He had no control over his mind. He was completely insane and no control. So as soon as he heard an adult with adult power telling him like it is, he was able to come back into himself and begin to gather himself again. Because I'm not looking to dominate anybody or do anything like that. I'm already the force that I am. So it's not about shoving him down. It's about he's covered up by a maniac energy and making him control himself enough to see how crazy his inner world is and not letting him affect the outer world in any kind of way so that he can affect his own inner world. Do you guys see what I mean? Now here's something else. The students who are the parents of this 1-year-old, they're very psychically sensitive, and they can see that this child gets taken over or got taken over by what you would almost call like a demon, like the family demons, right, that take over everybody. Well, when does it start? It starts when they're young. So this child was sort of takeoverable before this happened, when she had control, because children have all this power, and when they have no control, which they don't, they get taken over, by this and that, a child that they learn from in the park or in the grocery store, and it can just create hell in their lives. And since this has happened, of them taking control, this child has become basically what you could call not possessible, not able to be taken over. And in that, she's more her natural self than she ever was before. So take this to heart, my people. I'm telling you the truth. This is from my experience. So, this is one of the things that nobody's really discussing right now, but it's what I see as being one of the number one problems in the universe. This world is this lack of discipline and control of the children. You never stomp someone's original self down. It's not about that. It's about not letting them destroy themselves. My parents, I will just say this, my mother was brutally raped throughout her life. She started to have, she had her first, got pregnant at 18, she had me at 20, and she had no time to recover from all this, right? No time, and she had no idea really how to parent me, as far as like she just didn't know what to do with me. But one thing she did know is that I had this special soul, and she was not going to let me destroy myself. So all the rest of my brothers were not, they weren't able, nobody was able to do what they did with me, but that's one thing my mother knew for certain, is that she was not going to let me destroy myself. So that's the one thing I got. I didn't get any of the nurturing that, one would need. I didn't get, I never got breast milk. I never got held the way that I really needed it, but I was controlled in a way that I needed it, and that allowed me to develop my inner self. My mother never looked to squash my inner self. We have many greater gifts than this. I was born in 1977, this is a long time ago. We have a lot more working for us now, and as parents, we need to apply ourselves, and really consider the kind of children we're creating in this world, and if we're hurting them or helping them with all this independence. Look at where the world's going, people. You think you're going in the right direction with all this freedom stuff with your children? Look at the world. You're creating it. Your children are creating it. So I just want you all to look at this intelligently, and really begin to make sense of it. Because there's no way in heck we're going to create a better world if we keep creating children who are so destructive. And they can't help it. It's our fault. It's always the parents' fault. It's never the children's fault. But we as adults now have adult level God power, and it's time to act like it. It's not something you want to do as a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, my parents did this and so I'm not going to do it. That's not adult thinking. That's child thinking. Now you're a child raising a child. We have to make sense of this stuff. So I just want to, ask everybody to please consider this, and to share this video with any parents that you know that might still stand a chance of being able to hear this, and there should never be a fight between a parent and a child, ever. What's the fight about? There's the child has no control. It doesn't do anything for itself. There should never be a fight, and that's what these young students of mine are realizing, and the students of the institutes of Wiley's are realizing, is that there's no reason to fight. They have control, period. Now are they going to step into their adult God self, or are they going to remain in their child God self? So I just want to encourage everybody to look at this really closely. If it triggers you, then great. Try and make sense of it. Don't troll me idly, but troll me professionally. You know what I'm saying? Give people something to chew on and think about. Otherwise, I'm going to call it out like it is. Bring something to the table, Bring another idea. Educate us, and but bring something real. All right. Peace to the human family and everybody in it.